A campaign to increase the efforts of the Girl Scouts in southern Arizona. Hear firsthand from the woman who runs the organization.
This is now my opportunity to give back to an organization that not only impacted my life, but impacted the lives of 59 million women in the United States.
And the supply and demand of illicit drugs, what the history of the drug trade reveals about today's problems along the border.
The end result after 30 years of a war on drugs is that the supply of drugs has not diminished at all, and the demand either. So I think the U.S. is putting its money in the wrong place.
This is Arizona Week. September is Hispanic Heritage Month, recognizing the contributions made by Hispanics in the U.S. Just this week, 2 high-profile visits to southern Arizona. Ana Maria Chavez is CEO of the Girl Scouts. Born and raised in Eloy, she also graduated from the James E. Rogers College of Law at the University of Arizona. A Girl Scout herself, she's promoting a campaign to increase membership.
I love this council. This was the council I grew up in as a child, and it made such an impact on me from not only the opportunity to go to Girl Scout camp, but it gave me a voice. It taught me at the age of 12 that I mattered and that I could actually have an impact on my local community.
What are some of the things this council does that might be different than others throughout the country?
What I love about this council is they're doing very innovative programming. They do the traditional Girl Scouts in schools, and so they get volunteers to start troops, but they're also serving girls in great need. So there's an amazing program that they do called Girl Scouts Beyond Bars, where mothers who unfortunately found themselves incarcerated, in trouble, but we create a program where their daughters can actually go visit their mothers and actually have a Girl Scout troop meeting behind bars, and allows the mother to continue to provide support to their daughter even though, because of incarceration situations, she's not able to be there every day. And with that program, we're seeing that it actually reduces the recidivism rate for that family. It actually, sometimes in cases where girls are very engaged in Girl Scouts, actually breaks the pattern of juvenile correctional issues and ultimately adult correctional issues.
You're from Eloy. Talk about that importance for you as a little girl from a small town to need this leadership in your life to make you who you are today.
Well, I was very fortunate that my family wanted to invest in my future. They clearly saw that this was an amazing program. They trusted the organization. They trusted the volunteers for Girl Scouts. And because of that, again, I was able to go away to Girl Scout camp. I learned about the environment in a very different way. And at the age of 12, decided I wanted to be a lawyer to actually create opportunities for other people. So this is now my opportunity to give back to an organization that not only impacted my life, but impacted the lives of 59 million women in the United States.
There may be families who are, having to watch the purse strings a bit and don't want to put their daughters in programs like this because it comes at a cost sometimes. What do you tell them about maybe investing in their children?
Well, it's the best investment they could ever make in a daughter, a niece, or a neighbor. It only costs $15 a year to be a Girl Scouts. That's 2 lattes, that you can buy on a daily basis. And what we do with that $15, we provide access to the largest girl leadership organization in the world, a network that will serve her well throughout her adulthood. In addition, we have very innovative programming around science, technology, engineering, and math. And our research shows that if a girl's involved in Girl Scouting, she learns skills that provide self-confidence opportunities for her, gives her an opportunity to do take action programs in her community, and also she can be involved in, of course, the largest girl-run business in the world, our cookie program.
That cookie program has taken some controversy over the years, people talking about the money involved going to the organization. How do you respond to those controversies, and maybe how do you sort of see that as a distraction and stay above the fray?
Well, actually, it's an amazing program. Many of the women who run their own businesses today say they actually got their business start in Girl Scouting. It is our most popular program for girls, and it also creates philanthropists out of these girls because, again, they take that investment of their cookie dollars and they figure out what take action programs they want to do in their city or town. And so they're actually behind the scenes funding all of your, dog parks. They're building new playgrounds for kids. And they're also helping us build a really strong infrastructure for Girl Scouts around the country. So they're helping us upgrade camps for other girls. We also provide scholarships for girls who may not be able to afford the $15 a year. And what I love about our Girl Scout Cookie program is, again, they are learning amazing business skills, entrepreneur skills that are going to help them in their future.
The Girl Scouts in the press recently for controversy surrounding Planned Parenthood, and you issued a statement talking about these things. What is your message maybe to these young girls who are watching this unfold and probably talk about it in their meetings?
What I love about Girl Scouts is, again, an amazing program to provide a platform for girls that's global. And what I love about our organization, that it's always been very inclusive. We provide services to girls in almost every zip code in this country and in over 90 countries in this world. And what I also love is that our alumni who've been products of our program are giving back in major ways. They are serving in your state legislatures. They're running companies. They're running religious organizations. They are really giving back in a huge way. We recently did a study on our alumni because we have 59 million. We asked them, what are you doing now? What we found was our alum go on to do great things. They get a higher level of education than most non-alum. They're volunteering in their communities at higher levels than non-Girl Scout alum. And they also are very excited about the decisions they made in their lives and where they are currently in their lives. So again, for me, it's an investment for your daughter. It's an investment in your community.
And now for my interview with Lalo Alcaraz, the creator of the first nationally syndicated, politically themed Latino daily comic strip. Lalo visited Tucson this week, speaking at several schools to students at the U of A and the YWCA. Here he is after a visit to Pueblo Magnet High School.
I didn't have anybody really at home that helped me with my college stuff, with my school. I like to say I was a the most unsupervised latchkey kid ever. But, and so I know that it's very important to, for young students to know that people can come out from poverty, they can come out from nothing and do what they like. And I'm not saying like I'm the world's greatest success or anything, but I do what I like to do for a living. And I'm really lucky to do it, and I want to tell them, you can do it too.
Satire is your specialty. La Cucaracha has been very successful. What do you tell kids about pursuing their dream, even though there is some comic underling to what you do?
I've been accused of not taking anything seriously, but I take everything seriously. I just think everything's funny. I laugh at inappropriate things, and that makes me a perfect candidate to do satire. Satirists see the world. Satire is another language. Like when I grew up, I read Mad Magazine, and that was like eye-opening. It showed, I was already bilingual. I grew up, Spanish is my first language, English was my second, and satire was my third. It helps you look at the world in a certain way. And, political satirists help everybody cope with the world, by laughing at it.
Do you worry that people don't take you seriously enough, that you just perpetuate stereotypes? You say there are a lot of haters out there who question what you do. Yeah,
I think everything is really got to be boiled down to your intent. If I have a character in my comic strip, he's the most popular character in the strip, taco cart guy, right? Like in my neighborhood, I love the taco cart guy. I want him to come set up on my corner so I can have some tacos. People like that exist, Of course, the problem is when that's the only image you see, that's when you can say, well, someone's, perpetuating a stereotype. Well, I wish that there were more Latino comic strips, out there, but sadly, there's just less than a handful, So I have to operate, hoping that people know that my intent is not to perpetuate any stereotypes. My intent is to explode them and to not totally flip them on their head, but also show, if you're a working class person and you sell tacos, it's all right. It's not a negative thing. My dad, I'm a walking stereotype myself, man. I like beans. My dad was a gardener. My mom cleaned houses. You can't get more, stereotypical than that. But those things exist, and we should be able to talk about, there's no shame in working for a living. That's what immigrants do every day.
You're breaking down barriers. You were highly critical of Disney. Now you work with Disney. How did that actually happen?
I like to think of it as I work with Pixar. I just got signed to be a consultant on the Pixar Day of the Dead movie, which is the one that, yes, 2 years ago, me and everyone else online critiqued heavily. And I even did a cartoon, Muerto Mouse, showing the Disney company trying to trademark the phrase Dia de los Muertos, which is what the trademark attorneys were doing. And we correctly pointed out, you screwed up. That looks terrible. Stop it. And we actually got Disney to withdraw the trademarks, for that project. Disney or Pixar turned around and said, well, who else, we can't think of anybody else better to breathe down our necks during this movie than Lalo. I guess that's what I don't know, I have no idea if that's what they said, but they thought, because I know what the audience, how the audience perceives a project. I do this for Bordertown, for the animated show that I work for on Fox. I write also on that. And so, my job is to kind of bounce ideas off and have them bounce ideas off of me or show me if, I haven't even seen a cut of the movie yet because they've been working on it for 4 years. And these things take 6 years. It's a big team, big process. But I'm hoping, I know it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah. Coming into an election season and Hispanic population is growing in this country, where is your future headed?
Downhill. No. I didn't think that I was going to get to see what's happening in Hollywood now, where Latinos are, and still just a little bit, finally getting our due, finally seeing more of our faces on screen. And behind the camera too. I didn't know that it was actually going to happen while I was alive, but everything's moving so fast. It's hard to predict. We know that 3 out of 4 Latinos have a negative view of Donald Trump, but 3 out of 4 eligible Latinos don't vote. And those are 2 statistics that kind of make me a little worried about the future. I mean, we can get angry, but do we act on it? Are we going to register to vote? And is it going to be more than just being a keyboard activist? I don't know. I'm on the Charles Schultz, work plan. The creator of Peanuts. Turn in your last cartoon, have it run, and then drop dead. I hope that's sort of my plan, is to just keep working, and create more, because that's when I'm happiest, is just making new, funny, sort of meaningful art.
To much different news now. Just this week, the 10th annual Graham and Greenlee Substance Abuse Awareness Conference in Safford, a discussion about the impact of drug abuse in rural Arizona, a conversation that calls to question a bigger issue about supply and demand of illicit drugs. Marcela Vasquez Leon is an associate professor at the University of Arizona. She teaches a course about drug wars in Latin America.
As you know, as probably everybody knows, Colombia is the larger producer and has, for a long time was the largest supplier of cocaine to the U.S. Colombia didn't start producing coca. Colombian traffickers used to bring the coca from Bolivia and Peru. When the United States started intervening in Colombia to try to stop the supply of drugs, that's when you begin to see Colombians producing coca. So for the past 25 years, the U.S. has been very much involved militarily in Colombia to try to reduce the supply of cocaine to the U.S. 20 years ago, Colombia was the highest or the largest supplier or producer of cocaine. It continues to be the largest producer and supplier. Now it's done in different ways. The US started intervening more or less in 1994, and it did an official negotiation with the Colombian government in 2000 with Plan Colombia. Through Plan Colombia, the US and the Colombian government have been working together to try to control the supply of drugs by military intervention. 80% of the money has gone to the military in Colombia. 20% or less has gone to alternative development strategies. And the amount of money that has been spent in Colombia by the US is about $9.4 billion. The strategies to reduce the supply have been completely ineffective and have been horribly detrimental to Colombia and to the Colombian people and Colombian society. On the one hand, the US has provided equipment to the military, to a Colombian government, and there have been several governments in that period that have been accused of human rights abuses. A lot of the money has also gone into fumigation of a highly toxic defoliant that is called Roundup SL, produced by the Monsanto Corporation. Colombia has been sprayed with Roundup SL from starting in 2000 until 2015. The program just ended. The consequence of aerial spraying has been terrible, both in terms of the environment and in terms of human health. Colombia just recently had to pay a large amount of money to Ecuador, who sued the Colombian government because the rivers going down from the Amazon, Colombian Amazon, to Ecuador are all contaminated with Roundup. So the contamination has been incredible, and the production of coca has actually gone up. So the last report I read from the UN states that from 2013 to 2014, the production of coca in Colombia increased by 40%. So coca is a very sturdy bush. The Roundup doesn't do anything to it. What it does is kill legal crops. So peasants who produce coca, who are already in extreme poverty and produce coca because it's the only crop that they can actually make some money out of, are losing their legal crops.
The supply is there.
The supply is there.
Is the demand here from the US?
Yes. The US continues to be, the largest consumer of illegal drugs in the world. One of the things that, and if let's say you take marijuana out of the equation because of legalization. If you look at things like heroin and cocaine, actually the demand for heroin has gone up. Again, Colombia is one of the 3 main producers of heroin in the world, of poppy. The largest one is Afghanistan, but Colombia produces about 2% and Mexico about 1%. And one of the problems with heroin is that a lot of the people that you see addicted to heroin in the US today have become addicted because of prescription medication, opioid-based medication for pain relief. So the medical establishment in the US is fueling addiction to heroin. When you talk about cocaine, I think the demand perhaps has declined a little bit, but it's pretty stable.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty stable market.
Do either governments, Mexico, Colombia, the US, do they really want to fix this problem?
I don't think they do. One of the big problems that I see today is Colombia has been used as a model by the US to reduce the production of drugs or the supply of drugs into the US. Colombia is not a model. Colombia is producing more cocaine today, more than ever. So to say that they have accomplished their objective, no, they have not. And it's pretty obvious. What they accomplished, what they have done through military monies is murdered people in Colombia who actually want to contribute to a real solution. Journalists, human rights activists, labor union leaders have been massacred with money coming through Plan Colombia by paramilitary groups, and there is a clear connection between paramilitary groups and the Colombian government and the Colombian military. What is happening today in Mexico is, as you know, when the drug cartels in Colombia were dismantled, what you have is the spread of drug organizations. So now we have like 300 drug organizations in Colombia, and a lot of the trafficking went to Mexico. So Mexico traffics the drugs that are produced in Colombia. It's also producing its own drugs. It hasn't stopped. I mean, supply continues. And what you see today in Mexico, the murder of journalists, of human rights activists, it's exactly what you saw in Colombia 10 or 20 years ago. It's exactly the same pattern. The US is giving money to a government, like it did in Colombia, that has been openly accused of human rights abuses. How can that be? And the end result, after 30 years of a war on drugs, is that the supply of drugs has not diminished at all, and the demand either. So I think the US is putting its money in the wrong place. Can you imagine if Colombia, if the $9 billion that have been spent in Colombia had been spent in trying to create alternative solutions to peasants who don't want to produce coca but have no other choice? Because the Colombian government is absent from the coca-producing regions.
The majority of cases in Tucson's federal courthouse are related to drug or human trafficking. Here's Jay Cigar, a federal public defender. The cases that you work with are the people who come to the United States with the expectation that they are going to cross the border illegally and move on into the rest of the U.S. And then they quickly learn that they're being coerced to do other things.
Right. That does happen where our client might claim to us that they've come just as a migrant, and then either they're offered the possibility of reducing their smuggling fee in coming in by taking the marijuana backpack, or it could be, I've been told many times that they were forced to take the marijuana backpack. And this has also been referred to as the passport, or the esto es tu pasaporte, this is your passport. And that they don't feel that they have a choice at that point, and they need to go forward. Because it's very different now than it was 10 or 15 years ago, when people were coming in without the sophisticated alien smuggling organizations. And so now the organizations that control the border, there's a quota, there's a certain amount that needs to be paid if you're going to try to come in without coming through one of the organizations. And typically people are coming in groups now, and come in large groups, both the marijuana backpacker cases where it might be 10 or 15 people in a group. It's also for illegal entrance where someone is coming in a group, and they're not just coming in one or two people and they know the route. They're actually going through this alien smuggling organization and paying money in the border town.
How are these cases flushed out in the legal system? Are there plea agreements? Are these people just deported? How does it end up looking?
The vast majority of the cases are resolved by plea, and they're facing a significant amount of time. Some of the harder drugs, such as methamphetamine or cocaine, carry very stiff sentences, and so in order to avoid that higher sentence, they will go forward with a plea agreement for less time. Plea agreements now typically allow for reduction in time that you can ask for. So even if there's a federal sentencing guideline range that you're starting with, then you can request a lower sentence. And that could be because of the family ties that the person has, the family connections that that person has, where you know that they have the support when they go back into Mexico, and that maybe hope that they're not going to get involved with this again. Could be that they had done this to begin with because they had money problems related to medical issues that were going on, for example. And sometimes they're actively recruited, I should say, with students sometimes are actively recruited because they don't have a prior criminal history, and they're someone who is going to be less suspicious crossing into the border. So for the harder drug type of cases, the cartels are trying to get people who have a visa to cross and don't have the prior criminal history. So right now on my caseload, I have a woman who is 62 years old charged with methamphetamine, 20 kilos of methamphetamine.
At the Federal Public Defender's Office, you're pretty busy. I mean, this is becoming what's going on in southern Arizona.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's constantly new cases coming in at the port of entry, so much so that they have certain types of policies out there for marijuana backpacker cases that typically before they would receive more time, and now they're receiving a misdemeanor, a simple possession plea agreement is what's often received a 6-month prison term for someone coming in for marijuana backpacking the first time, just because there's such a high volume, and the resources from the government, from the U.S. Attorney's Office to be able to deal with that becomes difficult, and so they have these types of these plea policies that we deal with on a regular basis.
If you would describe what you're hearing from your clients on how they get involved in this business.
Well, one, obviously it's the money that there's a money reason. If that's just a pure straight case of I'm trying to get a certain amount of money to help out because I've got medical problems in the family or otherwise. There's also sometimes the duress situation where they're being forced through what they call the plata or plomo, the silver or lead. And so there might at first be looked at as a possible recruit and actively requesting that person to take the drugs across. But then when they refuse to, then they could become threatened, and threats to themselves or to their family if they do not take the drugs across. So that is a defense of duress that you could assert. It's difficult to prove, the defense has to prove it, and it's difficult to find the corroborating information for that. There is a situation where a person will come in to the U.S. Believing that they're going to come and pick up money here. Their agreement is to pick up money in the U.S. and bring it back into Mexico. We've seen several of these cases come out recently. And so, in other words, that they don't know, they don't have the knowledge that the drugs are in the vehicle. And, the government would say, well, that's just something that goes around the jail and it's a way to maybe get less time because the money case is going to maybe be less time. However, that is something that many clients have told me, and you have to be able to try to work with that and see if there's any kind of corroborating information that you can come up with, because it is a different type of a crime, and they might not be originally intending to engage in the drug trafficking.
Join us next week as we take a closer look at the lives of people affected by drug addiction, particularly heroin, what's now been labeled a pandemic. That's our program. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera.